Hello and welcome to the show. Tonight we're talking divorce in the church. We all agree that there is a problem, but what we want to know is what really has gone wrong. My guests tonight are Charles and Susan Opiyo, who are the founders of the Cyrus community, which deals mainly with spiritual leadership and 2-as-1 couples. Karibuni sana katika show.
Asante.
You're looking lovely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been away out of the country for over 8 years, but you're saying you've run your ministry for 15 years.
Yes.
Why have you been away, first and foremost?
All right, a number of things. Other than the fact that we're involved in ministry, we've also got another arm, which is more in business, innovation and technology.
Okay.
And so for us, it's not separation. Right. It works together. But as we will go along, and I'll bring that up in our discussion, how your life is complete in this thing called the purposes of God that carries everything, inclusive of your business, your marriage, every scenario, your ministry. So for us, where you need to function part-time requires the entire picture. So we were away also in the context that that season was required.
Okay.
It was absolutely required for a lot of things that was unfolding in our lives.
Yeah.
We've got to learn about some of these things outside of the context of our culture.
All right.
In our environment, so that you can see that this is an issue that is not cultural only.
Yeah.
It's across the board.
That was Botswana.
That was Botswana, yes.
Is it any difficult being out there in a marriage while having to deal with all this cultural and different environments than when you were back home?
Probably the most difficult place to run a marriage is Botswana.
Is that so?
Anywhere in Africa.
Please explain.
Not to take anything away from them, but the thing is, you're dealing with a cultural background that has got no family unit.
Okay.
You see, the picture is, again, these are some of the things we say that the church needs to be educated a little. When we deal with issues, we can't limit ourselves to just problems. We need to see a bigger picture. Now, in Botswana, historically, remember, we had a season with apartheid in South Africa.
Yeah.
And the only work that could be gotten was the mines. So a lot of the men went to work in the mines. And the women stayed home.
Yeah.
Then over time, as things changed, the economy changed, it's the women who went to school.
Right.
It's the women who had all these things. These men were in the mines forever. And they would come home and find these women who've improved in society,
Yeah.
who've really become intellectual. I mean, Botswana, if you look about gender parity, probably the highest in Africa.
Is that so?
Yeah, Chief Justice, AG, go across the board, ministers, directors of companies. But what does that do? It emasculates the men. You now come into an environment where you are not a leader anymore. You do not have structure. So with that background in place, the next generation learns the same thing. And it moves on. So when men grow up, when the youth grow up, there's a problem. Problem number two, the culture, the natural culture of the people comes from an environment where, sad to say, promiscuity is not a big deal.
Really?
Not in the least. It's an unchurched environment because the country is wealthy through diamonds. So I call it the curse of wealth.
Yeah.
In the sense that if our logical thinking, like we do normally in the church, is that the work of a man is to provide, then that goes out of the window in a setting like that.
Sad.
Yeah, because that can't be his standpoint anymore.
Okay.
That's not what he brings to a marriage anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so let's come to the discussion of the day, then divorce in churches. What is happening? Yet we're the same people who, preach the word. You know, we take and live on the word. We say God is the one who made marriage. And so marriage has to work God's way. And so we base marriage on the word of God, but it fails. What is happening?
I think what we need to find out is, do we even believe in God? Does he exist? Do we believe when we say God said? Is God somebody in our mind or in our spirit? Is God a being out there that we feel that he brings sanity into society? Or is this somebody I think my life depends on? Because what has happened now, I'll come and tell you, God told me to divorce so and so. God told me to marry so and so. This God talks too much, but the problem is he talks in January, we marry, and in December we divorce. Is that God? No. So the church needs to sit back and say, wait a minute, we have said all these things, and we have said all this is God who said, but when it goes to the opposite, we don't all sit down and say, come and check. Let us analyze this and say, if it was God, then where did it go wrong? Because if it was God, it should be very good. So when we talk about divorce, we have to go back to the genesis of the issue. We cannot discuss divorce without discussing the marriage. Yeah. The reason we have divorce is because in the first place there was marriage. Yes. So where did it originate from? Yeah. Where did the two people meet? Yeah. How did they meet? Yeah. What is the foundation of their marriage? If you can solve that, then you will know there was no foundation. Maybe that's why there's a divorce. Or there was a foundation which later may be changed. Somebody tried to change it, and that's why it's led to divorce. So we need to go back and understand, what is marriage? What is man anyway? What is woman? What did we get created for? To come and get married, then divorce? So maybe that's where we should, those are the questions we should be asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talk about God. And the fact that we may not understand what he wants for marriage.
That's the thing.
So when you're talking about God, what should people understand as his purpose for marriage?
All right, I think where we need to start, as a wise person once said, nothing goes wrong, things start wrong.
Nothing goes wrong?
Things start wrong.
Things start wrong. Please explain.
Once, let me use a principle I call the margin of error. A good example is, you want to leave JKIA, right? And you want to fly to Dubai. There's a specific flight plan with a destination. If that pilot takes off 2 centimeters off course, he's not even going to land in the Middle East.
Completely different direction.
Completely. And he can claim he's landed where he was going. Doesn't change it. He can name, and that's what we've done. We've begun wrong, then we've arrived at a certain place, and now we want to give that place a name, and then we expect God to come and fix what we want. This is what the problem is. Because we've sat with couples, and we always ask this simple question. Where did you meet? When you met, at what point did you decide you want to get married? Why? Those questions are very leading, because you'll discover what we've, like you've said, we've got something called 2 as 1 couples. In 2 as 1 couples, we have got a theme called marriage A and marriage B. And the whole concept is this. Marriage A represents God's intention for marriage. Now, to do that, we have to go back to God, not to church. Sorry to say.
Not church.
Not to church.
Okay.
To God. In fact, I would go as far as saying that God did not create us for marriage.
Really?
No. God created marriage for his purpose.
Okay.
So we've turned it around to make it our thing.
Yes.
Which then God has to come and fix.
Okay.
Instead of finding out what was it for.
So there's a disconnect.
Completely. And we've gone over for years and built on that disconnect, because the principle is this. Go back into Genesis, the principle of creation. We always take people back to what I call the garden. And we say, you need to return to the garden. We tell couples, if you met outside the garden, you must go back and meet in the garden.
What does that mean?
I think if we talk about the garden, we have Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. If you see those 2 chapters, it talks about God. Everything is about him. He's the center of everything. He is saying, let there be. He is creating. Then after chapter 2, we have chapter 3, where man falls. Now, everything we are talking about today is man's activities after chapter 3. So what happens with God chapter 1 and chapter 2 is God's plan. Anything in life, creation of everything. So if we want to go back and find out what is marriage, we must go back to chapter 1 and 2. But what we are defining today as marriage is what happened after chapter 3. Because when you see chapter 3, the man was, the Bible talks about chapter 3 verse 24 says, and God put man outside the garden to till the garden out of which he was taken out of. This is not where God wanted him to be. Now he put him outside. Now from this outside is where we have defined everything. This outside is where we have defined who man is, who the woman is, what the marriage is all about, from the outside of God. Now, when we say go back to garden, we're saying go back to chapter 1 and 2 and let God breathe to man again and say, let me tell you who you are. If you see chapter 3, when man falls, the only question God comes up with is, where are you? And that's the question he's asking the men today. In the nation, in the world, in the church, he's asking them only one question, where are you? The man was not missing in the garden. He was missing in his place of activity. He was missing out of his place of function. So when we say God said, where are you? It's not like God really went and found out like, hello, you guys are gone, where are you? Yeah. No, God is telling you, my friend, you're missing from your place of function. So when I say, where are you? I'm trying to take you back to chapter 2.
It's not as if God couldn't see where he was.
It's not that. And that's how we have interpreted it. They're not lost. I mean, God created them.
I like that. You know? I love that. Let's go on a break. When we come back, we'll definitely talk more. And also in your ministry of 2 as 1, what goes on there? And whether you have success stories. Yeah. Don't go away. Remember, you can send in your comments on our SMS line 20001. Welcome back to the show. We are talking divorce in the church, and our guests tonight are Charles and Susan Opiyo. Wow. Okay. So now you're saying in the book of Genesis 1-2, talk about creation. 3, man falls. Yes. And now he's outside of the will of God. Yes. That's where the problem begins.
And I think now when we talk about Genesis chapter 3, all the way to Revelation, we are seeing now a journey of redemption. God trying to get back man, getting back man to himself, not to the church, not to fellowships, not to a building. This is a tool that our journey should end in him. Remember, we start by saying in 1 and 2 of Genesis, we are saying that is where man came out. God said, let us make man, meaning he came out of man. Yeah. I mean, man came out of God. And out of that, we are saying that's where you're supposed to return for you to get your way forward. So chapter 3 onwards is redemption journey. God has stopped. God's purposes has like stopped. Now let me redeem this man who has fallen. So when we talk about marriage, that's why he said there's marriage A, which is defined in chapter 1 and 2. Right. God's intention of what he wanted. Yeah. But now we have marriage B, which is now chapter 3 onwards. Okay. Now remember, when we talk about marriage B, we are saying these marriages are held in church. Yes. It doesn't mean because I went to church, that's Christian marriage. No. It could be Christian in a religious way, but not kingdom. There's a difference between church and kingdom. Okay. God is talking kingdom. He has a bigger picture. Right. But the church is talking about you and your husband. The devil is attacking you and your husband. The devil is coming to me and him. It's all about me. When you see the bigger picture, you note there's a mandate on man and woman. That is what the devil is hitting. Now, when we see that picture, we know it's not about me anymore. It's about him. The devil is hitting us to stop him. In that picture, we come out of the way and we allow God to talk to us. But when it is about me and him, it is what he can do for me and what he can get out of me. It is all, it's all about us. So we have to reach a place where we say, stop. What is this about us? Is it us or him? Swap the pictures. When it is about him, then that's when we go back to the word.
It has to remain about him.
It's all about him. Our lives is all about him.
Not even the church.
Not even the church.
Not even that marriage counselor in church.
Yes.
Because fact, we live in church looking for answers.
And if you see in the creation of man, a very interesting thing happens. Everything God creates up to that point is said is good or is very good. And the first time God said it is not good is when he said it is not good for man to be alone. Now, from the fallen perspective, we misinterpret that scripture. We think God said it is not good for man to be lonely. It's not about loneliness. The word alone here has a very different meaning. It means the next level of what he needs to carry out now requires a help meet. Yes. So the principle is this. If I have an assignment and I have someone coming to help me, what is important? Us or the assignment?
The assignment. Okay.
The assignment is the reason that I am functioning, and it's a reason this other person is coming in. Yeah. So when a man has not even defined his assignment in God, it's not time for marriage yet.
And I think also when we check that scripture that he's talking about, it says that it's not good for man to be alone.
Yes.
But what man? Not every man. There are some men that are better alone. Correct. The man who is not good to be alone is the man that God is talking about. He is in God. Okay. God has defined who he is. He has an identity in God, not in the things he has gathered, not in the wife he has married, not in the things he has acquired, not in his title, not the family he comes from, not the education background, but this is a man who beyond all these things has an identity in God.
A man who is fully submitted to God. Yes.
That man, God tells him, this is your garden, till and keep it. That kind of a man, it is not good for him to be alone. A man who has no clue who he is, if his identity is in what he has, his titles, that man should be better be left alone.
Very dangerous man. And that's what we have in our society.
That's what we have.
Therefore,
Men who don't have
identities.
Yes. Men who have got no clue who they are. Everything around them is defined by the society, by the environment. Yes. You know, they do things to please the outside. Yes. They do things, you know, to look good. But they really don't have anything when it comes
spiritually.
Yeah. When it comes to having a relationship with God,
that one does not work. And you notice when the man fell and he was put in the garden, God told him, remember now he has fallen. When people say that God cursed man, he did not curse him. He was giving him the consequences of the activity that he has taken.
He was telling him the facts.
With the kind of fruit that you have eaten, this is inevitable. This must happen.
The consequences.
Yes.
Okay, so because you did this,
this must happen.
This has to happen.
Yes.
But I did not.
No, he said, cursed is the ground for your sake. You have caused the ground to respond to you as if it is cursed.
So the blessing stands, but you will reap the fruit of what you have done, which is the consequence.
Which is the consequence. So you're now out of God's garden. You are in the garden from which you are taken. And the Bible says when God was talking to the woman, he told her about pain in childbearing. When he talked to the serpent, he said something very important that we miss out. That dust shall you eat all the days of your life, isn't it? Yeah. Then to the man, you're going back to till the ground out of which you came from. For dust you are, dust you shall return. Yes. These two dust, can you put them together? That serpent will eat dust. Okay. You are dust. Outside of God, we are dust. That means we are the food for the devil. That is why he will always push us up and down. That is why your life will always be chasing the devil. Half the time, the church is talking about the devil is after me.
So let me ask, what are we chasing wind here? Because
most of the time
we have weddings. What people call marriages, we have weddings taking place every other day.
Yes.
People getting married to people who have got no idea where they're getting into marriage.
Yes.
What is happening?
Well, this is the key. Remember, outside the garden, every activity that began from the moment they were banished was man's attempt to cover up the gaps. Because I no longer hear God, I become my own God, literally. That's what happened. That's what the devil offered. He said, if you eat, you will be like God. The word like God there simply means you'll be equal to God. You will determine what is evil, what is good. So man now determined, I don't need God's opinion anymore. I need my own opinion of everything. Yeah. So began to create things. Now you go and read when they had their children, it says, and Adam had a son after his own kind. Remember, before he was after God's own kind.
Now it's different.
Now at the fall, he's now giving birth after his own kind. And the minute you do that, that is where culture was created. Culture is man's way of creating society outside of God, in simple terms. Yeah. So now over time, what have we done?
That he can control.
Yes, and then he'll try and fit everything God created into it his way.
His way. So he has become the little God.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then what we've done now, we've shaped things around. Instead of being made in God's image, we've now made God in our image.
Our own image. We put him in boxes. Yes.
And he must fit every profile we create.
Oh my goodness.
So what do? We go and have our cultural arrangements for marriage.
Yes.
I'm getting married because my family has said it's time.
Yeah.
Age.
I'm getting married because my friend got married.
Thank you. All these reasons. When we are done with the reasons, and we've rationalized, we've convinced ourselves, we've done everything we want, we then bring it to the church to rubber stamp.
Yeah, here it is.
And then we say it's a Christian wedding. Now, you have a situation here.
We are very lost. I would like us to go on a break. Yeah. All right. Remember, you can send in your SMSs on our SMS line 20001 by starting with Faraja. Also, like our Facebook page, Faraja K24 TV, and leave us your comments. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. We are talking divorce in the church with Charles and Susan Opiyo. I went through your Facebook page and I got this lovely post that you put in, one of you. And it says, a man can never get his identity from the fallen state he was born. In this state, his identity will be what society has defined, what education laid out, and what his past experiences embedded on him. Corruption of morals and decay of human culture that the world is experiencing today is due to the misplacement of the male man, and in circles he will go until he finds his creator, who will reveal to him his true identity that is not external but an internal reconfiguration and realignment to the person he is supposed to be. That's heavy.
It is.
That's heavy.
I think what you're trying to say is what we see in society today, the problems you're having today, will not be sorted by male and female having a line in between, and instead of complementing each other, they are competing. We have forgotten the devil. We've put him far away from this thing called marriage, and now it is man versus woman. The men are doing this to us, so we are doing this to them. And you're saying, hello, you've just fallen into the hands of the devil. That's all he wanted. And that's what we are saying, until man, not the woman, the man goes back to his place, because later in the Bible, when most of our viewers know that the Bible talks about men is the head. When they are competing, the women say, no, I don't agree with that scripture, because it's a competition thing. The head is what is visible. I don't want to be told I'm the body. But when you go to Christ, if we talk about marriage is a picture of Christ and the church, we realize Christ is the head. We are the body. And we are the ones who are supposed to have this powerful, powerful expression of what the head is thinking. So when the woman, if you check society today, there is one thing we are all in agreement. Yeah. Women are powerful. Yeah. It's only a woman who will tell you they have a baby on one side, they're thinking about this, and they're picking the phone and they're cooking. Yeah. But that is a picture of the church. Yeah. We are so powerful that the devil shakes. So when you look at the woman, she is told you are so powerful, you are the one who will execute this thing, you are the one with the womb, so that when the ideas come from the head, you have a place to nurture them. That's how much power we have. Yes. It is the woman who has the power to take the seed, and when it comes together, you bring back a baby. Yes. That is power. Yes. But when we don't realize that, when we think it is all about ourselves, I want to be the head. So what happens, and maybe I'll say this headed on what we're talking about today, I'll say something we always tell couples, and I'll let him also talk about that, that when we're in a house, both of us, I'm supposed to be the woman, he's supposed to be the man, but I come to a place where the men are beaten spiritually, but it will manifest naturally. So we have men who are not taking their position, we have men who are not taking their place in the spirit, they are not taking their place in the physical. So what do we do as women? Remember, I said we are powerful. I take over. But when I take over,
so I'm the one praying for my family. I'm the one doing
everything.
Yet I'm not supposed to do that.
You're the one hearing the direction, spiritual direction of the family. Yeah. You're the one who is raising these kids. You're laying your hands on them.
But if your husband is not able, let me say,
to hear,
if they're not doing that, who should do that?
And that's
because the Bible is very clear on who should wash who with the word.
With the word. But when they don't do that, and I take his place in the spirit, I have taken the spirit of man.
Oh my goodness.
So in the spirit, he won't hear my words. He won't hear my complaints.
He's hearing another man.
He's hearing a man. And he's wondering, what are two men doing in
the same house? That's why he goes out to look for another one.
And we are not excusing the men for going out. But a man was created to have a being around him that responds to him. But when we become two men, there's collision. But what happens to these two these two people? We point at gay marriages. We point and say, no, that is wrong. And God says, leave those ones alone. They have already exposed themselves and they told you we are gays. You are, and you're not realizing. We're in a marriage where we have Christian gay marriages, where we have two men, because this woman now has taken up. So when he comes home, he doesn't see a woman. He doesn't see the feminine side. He doesn't see the soft side. He doesn't see someone who is listening for us to go somewhere.
Who respects, who waits for leadership.
On the other hand, she doesn't see a man who is taking. Let me tell you, and maybe I'll say this for any of the pastors who are watching. When a man of God stands up, and the people are sitting down here, the women see the kind of man they are looking for.
That's right.
Man in authority.
That's
a man
why there's
who
so
can
many
speak.
women in church.
Yes, a man who can hear God.
Yes.
A man who can command the enemy.
He has it
He
all.
has it
She
all.
was designed to respond to that kind of a man.
Yes.
Okay.
Since she was created,
Yes.
something in her being knows that the one who leads me must hear God. Something she knows. Now, this is now the dangerous side of the things. Who killed the boys?
Yeah.
Herod.
And Pharaoh.
Pharaoh. Men. This is the problem now.
Remember Moses
I do.
and Jesus?
Yeah.
Kill
Now,
all the
this
boys.
is the problem now.
Yeah.
Our problem, and this I say to leaders in ministry, I've been in the ministry, I've been a pastor, I've been down that road. And I've also been within the systems for time. This is important for pastors.
Please.
Many pastors turn their men into women.
How do you mean?
Eunuchs. Your job, the principal issue is this. The man role is a very dominant and competitive role.
Yes.
Sit in territory. That's why when you hear about Jesus is likened to the lion of the tribe of Judah. Look at the lion pride.
Yeah.
There can only be one king.
Yes. Only one king.
Now, the problem is, if you think the church is your pride and your territory, there will be one king, you. But if you realize that the church is not even yours, like I said about Peter, Jesus said to him, on this I will build my church. It is his.
Yes.
He builds it, you don't. What does that mean? You are a tool in his hand to build his church, not yours.
Okay.
The minute it becomes yours, you're king. When you become king, all men who come around you must bow.
Right.
You see it everywhere.
They're
Look at our
always running
ministries.
around.
And imagine the wife of that man
Oh
looking
my
at her
goodness.
husband who is behaving like she should.
in a submissive position. We are not saying men should go to church and have this authority.
No.
But we are saying no, the leadership should recognize
Should create
that
confidence.
these men should have confidence. But what do we have today?
Oh my goodness.
Ladies' meetings all over. Do we
Yes.
have men?
Very few.
Very few. And even the few we have, majority of them would be people talking about business. Men don't want to hear about business. They can go to school for that. Men don't want to hear about business. They can study that in the books. What they want to hear is, how do I go back to my father? Who will give me back my identity?
Okay.
That's the cry in the nation.
Yeah.
When we come and see the men in the nation, when you see them drinking and sleeping in the gutters, the cry is one: who am I and who can tell me who I am? When you see men who are not responsible in the homes, they're asking a question: who am I? Because when I'm in this house, I'm seeing we are two men,
Yeah.
or the man has taken the woman's role. Now we
Yeah.
are two women in the house.
Yeah.
So really, the cry in the nation is men. Who are we? And for us women, we are crying, men, arise.
Yeah.
But we don't know
Where
how to
are
do
you?
the interchange. I don't know how to pull back for him to arise. I still feel like I need to tell him, you need to arise. And to arise, you need to do this. I'm still in control. Come to church.
See that very
Follow
question
us.
you asked.
Yeah.
What does a woman do when her man is not?
Yes.
We are throwing again the weight to the woman. Here we go again. It's become a vicious circle. We want her to do something
For her man.
which then means she will have to keep doing something to keep her man going. So who's in charge?
She's still in charge.
So the principle is very simple. First of all, we've got a vicious circle.
Yes.
If I've been under a ministry for years, where that's how we treated men, monkey see, monkey do. When it's my time, majority of the people who begin other churches split. They finally reach this frustration point.
Yes.
Now, breaking out already is a wrong foundation. Again, you're going to start wrong. And so this cycle continues. And in this cycle, we are marrying people.
Yes.
In this cycle, we every other thing. And what is the best message that we can tell people when we counsel them for marriage?
Yeah.
Make sure you provide for her. Make sure you serve him.
Submit. Yeah.
You're supposed to be submitting to the Lord, not to him. And he must be carrying the Lord for you to submit to.
Yeah, I think it's very, very difficult to submit to a man who's not submitted to God.
Yes.
That's the
It's
principle.
That's where the
almost
problem starts. When
impossible.
So we are taking
But
a
I
spiritual
thought
principle.
that a wife submits to the man than to God.
This is the principle. Let's go back to 1 Corinthians 11,
Yeah.
where we kind of draw that thing, and I usually say we edit it to fit our models.
Okay.
Because it starts by saying, for the head of Christ is God.
Yes.
So the principle is being laid out, where the headship starts.
God.
And the head of the man is Christ, and the head of the woman.
Man.
Now, using that order, that means that woman is not submitting to that man principally. She's submitting to Christ, who he submitted to,
Okay.
who is submitting to God.
Yeah.
So she's submitting to God.
All right.
This is the order. So
Yeah.
we can't pick a piece of the Bible
And
and a piece
leave
of
the other.
tradition,
Yeah.
where here we say, woman, submit to your husband, but the definition for husband here is traditional.
Yes.
But the submission here is spiritual.
You
You can't
guys-
bring them together.
All right. I would like us to go on a break. When we come back, please talk to the men. Talk to the men and tell them to stop messing us up.
Go back to the
Yeah,
Creator.
rightful
Yes.
places.
Go back to their
Yes.
position.
Yeah.
Go back to their place.
They need to. Otherwise, we have no society. We're lost. We're completely lost. All right. Remember, you can send in your comments on our SMS line 20001 by starting with Faraja. Do not go away. Welcome back to the show. We are talking divorce in the church, and our guests tonight are Charles and Susan Opiyo, who have a ministry called 2 as 1 Couples. Wow, you guys, you have a lot of stuff. You have a lot. Oh my goodness. So there are people, this is the reality, and I'm sure so many people watching can resonate with what you're saying. So if there's a woman out there watching you tonight and she's thinking, oh my God, how do I go back? How do I tone down? How do I let my husband take up the position of leadership? How do I start over? How can I make this right? What would you say to them?
I think when we say that women are powerful, we never tell them to come down. We tell the men, go up. Don't pull the woman down. No, man, go up.
Okay.
So we cannot have these women who have, I mean, when we talk powerful, we are talking natural, career, you know, that's where we are talking. But in the natural, that doesn't work. I mean, doesn't bother us here. We are talking about spiritual. So men, take your place in the spirit. We are not saying if your wife has 10 PhDs, you go and pursue your PhD. That's not where power comes from.
No,
we are talking about spiritual authority.
Yes.
So when we talk about women and their power, we are saying, how do you now harness your power towards this thing that God is calling you to? Because if you notice when we are talking about divorce, our viewers, I hope everybody understood we are saying there is marriage A, which is God's pattern, and marriage B. Now, marriage B, divorce is inevitable. Maybe that's the sorry thing to say. But now the worst problem is all of us started on marriage B. We have to migrate our marriages. I'm married. How do I go now from marriage A, marriage B to marriage A?
Yes.
Now that is where the men come in, and it's the men who has to lead us back to that place. Where we say, as a wife, I have to come to a place where I say, no, I want my man to go back to where he's supposed to be. But as long as we in marriage B, we will complain about he's not doing this, he is not providing. Men in marriage B don't.
He's not even able
Women are
to.
not submitting. Women in marriage B won't. As long as we are discussing this marriage. So when we talk about counseling, and you are counseling from this position, this is called being active with no productivity here. Here you are totally in motion, talking, but no progress.
So what does a woman do with all the empowerment that she has?
That we are now talking spiritual. She must also step up from the physical, the fig trees that they are covering themselves with. Remember when they fell, the first thing they took was fig leaves. What are the fig leaves today? Your titles, your abilities, your skills. Those are what you're using today. We are saying go to a place of back to Genesis 1, where Genesis 2, it ends up by saying, and they were naked and not ashamed. We're not talking about the physical nakedness. We're talking in the spirit. We can communicate. So women need to come to a place of saying, wait a minute, this man, the first position, the first provision he needs to provide for this family is spiritual provision. When it comes to rent and school fees and holidays, we can do that together. Those are physical things.
Susan, is the man able to do that?
He can, and I'm sure he'll tell us.
Please.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
I think this is what I'd say to the men. You see, first of all, we begin solving by a problem by accepting it exists.
Yeah.
That the man I am today is not the man I'm supposed to be.
Yes.
And this requires, now we are speaking specifically to married couples in this context.
Yes.
We have an entirely different discussion with singles, but this is a married person. We're saying, you know what? Stop. When people come to us for counseling, they get a rude shock.
Why is that?
Because we don't counsel people.
What do you mean?
What we do is we say, God is not going to fix you. Our job, I lead the men back to their maker.
Okay.
She leads the women back to their maker. Then they define what their marriage means. We don't.
Okay.
The word of God will
God will
always
tell
define.
them who they are.
Yeah.
We refuse to determine that we know who they are.
Yes.
Remember, God is asking one question.
I think I like that.
Yeah, God is asking one question, where are you?
Yeah.
When you arrive there, He'll tell you.
Yeah. I think
But we have to stop being these counselors who think our job is to manage people's
we
marriages.
give them too much credit. These counselors, these so-called men of God, and everything begins and ends with them. They tell you to divorce, they tell you to separate, they tell you to
And I think
give tithe or seed for this thing.
I think they're just that. Men of God. If I am a man of God, it means it's not about me. It is the God in me. That means when you come for counseling, I don't tell you what I think is right. Even though I know you, I know everything that you're going through. I give you His word, and that is the word that covers you.
What we do,
Yes.
like you said, we've got 2S1 and we've got Cyrus community.
Yeah.
And in Cyrus community, we speak leadership.
Okay.
We use the model of, if you study the king Cyrus, you'll discover that he's the one who rescued, who basically destroyed Babylon and allowed the people to go back and build the temple. So our model works around rescue. It simply means you have to find your identity again. Remember I began with Jesus? You are the son of God. You must realize you're a son. Currently we are operating as orphans. Like somebody without a father.
Without a father.
Now an orphan only knows one thing, survival.
Yeah.
And he trusts nobody,
No.
and it doesn't matter, the means justify the ends.
Yeah. Get out of my way.
That's the thing.
I need to provide for my family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done. And the problem is we've also primed the women to expect provision, not leadership from a man.
It's very sad.
So what then happens, what about when you, the woman, now have provision? Confusion. You ask yourself questions like, what is the man for?
Why
Then,
do I need him?
because he was given the wrong title.
Yeah.
So a man must realize, now this journey that we usually talk about is a very complex journey because it redefines you. You might even find that the job you have, you took up because you're trying to prove a point.
Yeah. It's too much competition. in
Everything you're
marriages.
doing is because you want to match the demand
Yeah.
of who your wife is or who everybody thinks you are,
Yeah.
and so on. So the issue here is, this is what I say to the men. Go to your father. He can hear you.
He can hear. He talks. I think that's what
You
we
see,
don't
we've never
believe.
made men believe that God
talks.
can
So we
hear
think he
them.
only talks to particular people.
You know,
Exactly.
no,
And that's the
talks.
lie that has been fed on us for
Yes.
too long.
And the question is asking is so simple. Where
Yeah.
are you? It's so
Yeah.
simple. Here, I
Where
mean, just
are
simple.
you?
Here I am.
Here I am.
What I can
Simple.
say to any man today, this is the problem. That's why we say we don't like counseling people, because we like directing them.
To their
Because
father.
if we counsel them, we create this hub of importance. Listen, there are too many marriages out there for us to fix, and there isn't enough time.
Okay.
So the best we can do, sometimes we'll have a marriage seminar, we'll give you the tools to go fix your marriage. We won't tell you how.
Yeah.
The word.
We're not trying to be this important guys. We are married 27 years.
Wow.
We've gone through every single thing we are telling you.
Wow.
We've journeyed it, and we
Okay.
discovered that at a certain point,
Yeah.
my turning point came. As a minister, there's no excuse.
Is that
Being
so?
a preacher doesn't save you from divorce.
Oh,
It
I've
never
seen
will. It will
recently
not.
this guy called Pastor Chris.
Yes.
popular Nigerian man, he's
Yes.
getting divorced.
What does scripture say?
Yeah.
If any man require to be a leader, and you know, we always think of it in terms of church leadership only.
No. Any kind
Anyone
of
going to be a leader should be in charge of his household.
So what happened? What was your turning point?
My turning point was when I realized nobody is going to help me do this. Because what happens, depending on who you go to talk to, and depending on your level of relationship to them, you get a different instruction every time. So if it is somebody who doesn't see you as a source of value financially, he won't give you the time of day. He'll tell you it's your problem. If you find somebody who you regularly a benefit to and an appear to, he will always try to minimize the blow. By always telling you, you're okay, I'll pray for you, it's fine. Nobody came up and told me, listen, you're the problem.
Yeah.
Your marriage is not the problem.
You are the
I
problem.
thank God there was a man who said to me one day and said, stop. When I listen to you, this is what I hear.
Yeah.
I hear a man who's trying to prove himself. I hear a man who's looking for people to endorse him. I hear a man who's hiding behind, God has multi-gifted me in many ways. Said, he told me, remove all your gifts. God gave them to you. Never go to him with them. They have no value to him.
Yeah.
So don't go to God, I'm a preacher, I'm a this, I'm a that.
Yeah.
Means nothing to him. He gave them to you.
Yes.
Says, go and say, you know what? Help me.
here.
Who am
I
I?
need your help.
Who am I really? What did you create me to be? If there is one prayer God answers men, who am I?
So men must go back to their source
Yes.
for our marriages
Yes.
to prevail or to work.
For life, this is not just about marriage.
For life.
When a marriage is in order, let me go as far as to say, if Adam and Eve did not fall, meaning perfect marriage, there'd be no church today.
Okay. Yeah,
That.
that I know. Yeah.
That's how serious this is.
Yeah.
Meaning if you get that order into place.
Yeah.
And I say to my fellow preachers,
We don't need
let's
churches.
stop changing the church into a clinic.
Come
Let's
fix-
change it into a
come and
service
fix you.
center where people are serviced to go be. Church service should be a service,
Oh my.
not a motivational thing. Let's stop motivating people.
Okay.
Let's transform them.
I'm sure they have heard you.
And I think,
Thank you so much for your time. We have
Yes.
to end here.
okay.
I hope we can do this another time.
I hope so too.
So how can people reach you? Your Facebook page is the Cyrus Community?
Yes, and two as one
two as
couple.
one.
And
couples.
two as one couples.
Yes.
So the Cyrus Community or two as one couples. They can
Yes.
get in touch with you.
Yes.
All
Our
right.
contacts are there.
Okay, your contact and everything is there.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, it was wonderful having you. I hope the men have heard. I hope they can go back and say, here we are. And then we can have a better society.
Absolutely.
And of course, better working marriages.
yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless.
Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you can still send in your comments on our SMS line 20001 by starting with Faraja. Until next time, my name is Jamila. Nawapenda nyote kwa kutizama.